All right.
Okay, 100th
Third
time
time
is a
is the
charm?
charm. Yes.
Okay. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Charlie, my dog has knocked over my light. Charlie, go lay down. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Jesus.
That's
We're meant to
quite the
record this
visual.
podcast today.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Jeez
The universe
Louise.
is like, whoa, 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 what are y'all doing? Well, here we go. Let's try this. Charlie, you need to go lay down, Mama. Go on. Go to your place. Go, girl. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Ah.
I think there's still a
So
delay. Like, I'm not echoing anymore, but I think there's a delay between what I say and when you hear it.
I think so too
Yeah.
in the reverse. There's a little lag,
Yeah.
which might be good for us because then we won't talk over each other as much as we normally do. Who knows?
Okay, let's try it.
We'll see. Although I have had really good feedback from quite a few people who say that they like our conversational style and like our banter and everything. And I'm like, well, good, because I'm always
Oh,
terrified that we
fun.
talk too fast and we talk over each other too much, and it's crazy. But so far,
Yeah,
everyone
the first
likes
day of
us.
school,
You know?
one of my football players that's sitting in the front of the room, he goes, "How much coffee have you had today?"
And you were like, energy drink number 7.
No, actually, this was like like before noon, I guess, or right before lunch. And so I was like, I mean, I don't drink coffee, not that much, but I just talk really fast all the time,
You're like
and
one of
especially
those
when I'm
people.
excited.
When I listen to podcasts, I usually speed them up. And there's some podcasts that I cannot do that because they'll have a guest on that talks really fast. And I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what they just said. Because I will listen to some of these podcasts on 1.5. I'm like, let's go. Tell me the story. Tell
Yeah.
me the things. Yeah. So if y'all are listening to us, don't speed it up. You won't hear Shanna at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to play a YouTube video in class and I listened to all of them on 1.5 also. And I was like, and one of the people in the video had an accent. And I was like, oh, my students are not going to have any idea what they are saying in this video. Slow it back down.
Slow down. Okay, so give me we tried this, recording like 2 or 17 that we just attempted. So you are in the process of you just applied for tenure, you are back into teaching, and you were
Yes.
kind of going over all of the things needed for your tenure package and what that's like. So what all did you like, how does that process work with your collection, and then how long does it take usually? What are they looking for? I'm so curious. I've never learned anything about that.
Yeah, well, it's really funny because I've actually never seen anyone else's tenure packet. So when I was putting mine together, I was like, I, I don't know. I mean, they kind of give you a vague list of what has to be in it, and you're like, it's just a guess. I don't know. I've never seen anybody else's. So it cracks me up that I am a college professor, but in my mind, I think sometimes I'm like a kindergarten teacher. So I got like the fat 3-ring binder and I put a cover page on the front with my picture on it and like, and then it's
That's
got
awesome.
like 10 different sections of like, again, of what they tell you. And then it has to have your resume in it. But in higher ed and doctoral level, they call it a curriculum vitae or vitae, and it's, or CV for short. And it's like an
Oh, yeah, yeah.
extended
Okay.
version of a resume. Mine's like 16
Right.
pages long. Yeah. So it's kind of ridiculous.
Gosh.
Yeah. And then the
Well, that's
process is
exciting.
drawn
So how
out over a
long?
couple of months.
Okay. Do you do like interviews and
Yeah.
stuff? Okay.
I
Well, I'm
have to
excited
wait
for you.
for other people. Yeah, I have to wait for other people to like review the packet and write letters about me and do evaluations of me.
Okay. Are you nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yes and no. Yes and no. I'm just ready to get to it.
that seems more like you.
Yeah.
Like, all right, just go. Next thing. Come
Yeah. Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Um, and
Um,
then in life, we're about to have a cold front in Texas. It's supposed to be like 75 tomorrow and then like 15 in a couple of days. So
ew.
don't you miss Texas?
15? Gross. No. No. It's cold here right now and it's in the 40s to 60s and I'm coaching all day in a long sleeve and a hoodie and a beanie. So, no. Yeah.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
we're
So what's
apparently
going on
getting
with
cold
you?
weather too in this week.
Ugh.
Um, okay. Yeah, this is going to be fun to edit this episode with all these lags. Um, but I'll do my best. So, let's see, what am I doing right now? Mostly trying to get life organized. So my goal this year has been to be more diligent with my time, like my schedule, and be
Hmm.
really intentional with what am I doing and what days am I doing it on. And I've always been one of those people that's kind of like I do the work when I'm inspired. You know, it's like, all right, the motivation's there and now I'm going to do it.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to practice being more mindful to do the work on the days I'm not motivated, but it's on my calendar to do the work. And then when I am motivated, if it's not on my calendar that day, I have a list, like I have an idea dump. And so it's like, okay, I'm excited about this thing. I just thought of this big idea. And usually I would just dive in and start doing it, but then I would fall off. You know, I don't follow through with it. So now my goal is like put it on this list. And then those isolated times that I've created to actually do the work, I'll go back to that list and start working on those things. Um, so
Hmm.
organizationally, that's my plan this year is to just be more diligent with my time. Um, I'm also trying very hard
I
right now to. Oh no, go ahead.
I like that. I actually hired a coach one time to help me with that because she would give me deadlines and be like, okay, this is your deadline. And it was kind of the same thing. Like, you can't just work on this when you feel like when you have a deadline. I'm kind of obviously a deadline person because I'm a procrastinator. So that was really good for me.
I've thought about doing that because I mean, I feel like even as coaches, we need coaches, right? Like we need people to help us. And I'm sure that I'm almost to that point where I'm can put my ego aside and be like, okay, fine, someone else tell me what I know to do that I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I'm doing right now, oh, I'm actually really excited about this. So we've talked so much about like creatine and nutrition and supplements. And so and how last episode, you know, we both talked about how like we're hard gainers, like it's hard for us to put on muscle. So I started an actual like plan for myself, the same way I would do for any of my nutrition clients. I was like, all right, Heather, here's your goal, here's your end date, here's the steps. So I'm doing an actual bulk, like I'm eating
Ooh.
almost 3,000 calories a day. I'm trying to
Ooh.
do a bodybuilder creatine bulk, which is cool. I haven't been really good about that, but I've been trying. I always get creatine in every day, but I'm trying to do like 3 to 4 scoops a day. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know why that's hard. Like it's unflavored. I can put it in anything, but it just slips my mind. And so I've gotten to like 2 to 3 a day. But yeah, I took pictures. Like I got on the InBody scan. I had like a goal. I've switched up my training routine to be a little bit more mindful of my cycle and like try to plan my, you know, hypertrophy training days and my power days around all that. So I'm really excited to see what the next, you know, like 12 weeks looks like in terms of putting on muscle and seeing that change in the body. So stay tuned.
Nice. So right now your goal is focused mostly on muscle gain more than performance, right?
Yeah, so I've got I mean, I'm not doing a true hypertrophy cycle just because that wouldn't align with what I do. Right.
Hmm.
It's the wrong time of year for me to do it. You know, like right now we're about to head into the CrossFit Open is coming up. Then like it's kind of competition season-esque. I've got a competition in June. So it wouldn't make the most sense for me to do a solo hypertrophy focused cycle right now. So I am still working in performance days, just not as much. So whereas it used to be 5 out of the 7 days I was doing HIIT training, I was doing some type of CrossFit Metcon. I'm trying to scale it back to maybe 3 times a week. Or if I do more of a Metcon, it's heavy, right? Like I'm using heavier weights than what I normally do. So that I'm really trying to keep on that strength side. But more often than not, I'm doing, so 4 to 5 days a week are strength specific, hypertrophy focused. And then like today, I was kind of a recovery day. So I did more power stuff like jump squats and, explosive movements, some jump rope, things like that to keep that in the body, that weren't necessarily heavy lifting. I know, right? Hey, I kept my heart rate down below zone 3. Recovery day, so my heart rate stayed low. It was okay.
So
but
there you go. I was playing around with Chat GPT. Have you used it very much yet?
Oh, I love playing on there. So fun.
Okay. So I was playing around with it, getting it to help make my workouts. Because Will and I like to work out together, but again, we're not really training for the same thing. So I was playing around with Chat GPT to get him to make us a workout that we could do together. It was really funny.
Do you like it? Like, I think it's kind of, I've used it sometime when it first came out. I remember using it because I was just curious, and I put it in, I was like, write me a workout that's 20 minutes long for this type of athlete, and like got really specific. And I've done it a few times and I find that it's really repetitive. And I'm like, which obviously
really?
It's a computer. Like there's not a lot of creativity with it that I found. So that part I didn't like. Like there's not a lot of diversity in the movements, which I was kind of hoping for. I was hoping it would be like, here's this fun thing that you never thought of trying to do before. And it was like, do deadlifts. And I was like, cool.
Yeah, I've been using it for all kinds of things. I've used it to make a scavenger hunt for one of my classes. I've used it to help me write some of my stuff for my tenure packet. Like, I kind of just treat it like Google, right? Like, let me just see what it's going to say and if I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I look at it too. Someone introduced me to Notebook LM. Have you heard of that yet? So it's from Google. It's like powered by Gemini, like their AI system. And it's not so much Chat GPT style where you like ask random questions. This is something where you upload documents. Like I can upload a full, I actually did it with my CrossFit level 1 manual. I uploaded the whole manual and it does this like, big, deep reading of it. And then you can do all kinds of stuff. I was like, write me a 10 question multiple choice test based on this manual. And so it'll write out this test and then it'll give you links to where it pulled it from in the manual. So you actually have the source. Like, this is exactly where I got this from. It creates podcasts, which is wild to me. And it sounds like real people, like having a conversation, and they'll talk to you about, I was like, write a podcast for the level 1 manual and go over all the major points like you're teaching it to a 5-year-old. And I mean, it did. It was like exactly what I had asked for. And it was like all the, 2 or 3 people like having a podcast episode and their voices sounded very real. But anyways, it's very cool. Like, I think it's a cool thing if you have a packet that you need to look at or a PDF you need to read or something you need more understanding of. You can pull out different pieces of it. Yeah. So Notebook LM, very cool.
Okay, wait. So you mean we're going to be obsolete? We don't even need to exist anymore. We don't need our podcast anymore because Notebook is going to take over.
I did think that was kind of scary. I was like listening to this little podcast that it created, and it was only 16 minutes long. It wasn't very long, but it sounded so real. There were some parts of it that like you could tell their voices kind of overlapped in a weird way. Like there's clearly some kinks there, but just the fact that they were able to do that and like take this PDF and write a podcast with voices and like do this thing exactly the way. Yeah. I thought the same thing. I was like, so how are we going to start knowing like the difference between fake and real podcasts? Unless they have video, obviously.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, so nobody go listen to those AI podcasts. Listen to us, real people.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, back to the creatine for a second. On
Hmm.
the loading that you're doing, do you want to tell people what brand you are using? Because I've been getting so many questions still since our episode on the creatine, like on the supplements podcast. So many people are still like, but what brand do I use? And even if you're still like, okay, so is it there a different kind for men and women?
Hmm. There's not, right? Like I'm a
Yeah.
big believer that if you're taking a supplement that says for women or something else along the lines of that, you are being scammed. It's a marketing ploy to get you to pay more money. Um, but no, creatine is creatine, in terms of not gender specific. I personally use Thorne. So I love their products all across the board. I think it's a great company. They have a lot of um, just amazing education in their product development. They also do a lot of tests, like at home tests that you can do. So I've been using Thorne for a while now with a lot of different things, and I'm trying to pull up their creatine right now, so I can like
And
give
then based
y'all
on what we talked
better
about, is
options.
it
So
hydrolyzed or
this one is creatine monohydrate. Um,
okay?
let me pull up the info. Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum, bum.
So I can't find. There's so much information on here. The nice thing is, if you are a professional athlete, this is NSF certified for sport. So
Very good to know.
so it's the one I'm taking. So creatine monohydrate, it's 5 grams per scoop. And this one is marketed as just daily uh, recovery endurance. It's not. They don't market it the way like some creatine packages you'll buy them and it'll be like take 1 scoop 3-4 times a day. This one isn't marketed that way, so it's more of general health in terms of what they're promoting it as, but it's the same as any other creatine package.
Hmm.
If I take it 4 times a day, I'm going to get the 20 grams versus the 5. But I'm just curious about it because that Stacey Sims podcast that you and I both listen to,
We're
um,
obsessed.
I hear, I love her. She's amazing. I hear so many different things about creatine, like we talked about in that last episode, and everybody now kind of leans towards like you don't need, a 2-week phase of what's it? Why can't I think of the word?
Loading.
Loading
Loading.
phase. Wow, that took me a long time. So you don't need that. But then, right, that was way too long to think of that word. But then listening to her when she was talking about it, and she was like, yeah, the bodybuilding community, like that is their protocol, and how they do it is they're taking it multiple times a day for a few weeks. They're getting and all that. So I was curious, and that's the only reason I'm doing it is more so because I'm like, well, I want to do this bulk anyways, and I've never tried doing more creatine. So I feel like there has to be something to it if the entire bodybuilding community does this, loading phases and puts in tons into their body for the first few weeks. Like there has to be something to that. So that's why I'm doing it, just to test it out and see if I notice a difference.
Very good. I can't wait to get the results and see how it goes for you.
Me too. Thank you. I can't wait to see if
Yeah.
the biceps do. I just inject it right there.
That's the way it works.
Yes. I get to choose
Yeah.
where it goes.
Yeah, wouldn't that work be nice?
Okay. So that's update for me. That's all I got. Oh, no, we both wanted to talk about the Stacey Sims thing since we brought her up.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
both had like epiphanies from this episode. So do you want to share your insight and after listening to this episode, and I'll link the episode in the show notes so that y'all can go listen to it because it's a great episode. Um,
Yeah, so Stacey Sims is a researcher from overseas. She has been specializing in physiology of women for the duration of her career. And she's super fascinating to listen to. I like that she's very straight to the point, no BS, no fluff, and she's not ever trying to sell you anything, which is counter to a lot of the other female women experts that are out there right now. But when I was listening to her, it really made me realize that I would love to teach a health class specifically for women because there's so many things about being a female that I was never taught. And I am only figuring them out now because I am teaching in this space and listening to these experts. And I am, in my late 40s. And where was this information when I was 18, developing my body and starting to hit some of these things that they're talking about? Or even younger, right? Like I mean, I think if we all think back to our childhood, we barely got talked to about having a period and getting pregnant, So where was the information then? And we definitely didn't get talked to about our bodies or just, anything. It was sort of just keep it to yourself. Definitely never let anybody see your pads or your tampons. And, like, don't let anybody know they're even, having a period, basically.
yeah. Yeah, it's a totally different mindset back then to what's going on now, which is great. I think like the conversation being opened up and more men too. More men are talking about it, which I think is
Hmm.
great. Like I feel like a big part of the reason why women have been so quiet is because of the way that men react to it, right? Whether they sorry, Charlie's moving all of my things, knocking over my light, moving my little desk here. This girl. Um, but I feel like men have this like, and probably just because of how they were raised too, right? They're taught that like that's we don't talk about that, or it's gross, or it's embarrassing, or yuck, and so then they make fun of girls for it, and then like that just grows and grows and grows to the point where women are just like, cool, I don't want to talk about my body. Um, and you don't want to talk about my body, right? Like you're not interested in my body, and I don't want to tell you about my body. So we just created this cycle of being silent. So I love that more women are talking about it. I love that more men are talking about it. And I had like a lot of the same things, listening to that episode. I was like, holy shit. Like, I didn't know this, and the people that were teaching me didn't know this. Like, we talked about, I think
Hmm.
I texted it to you that, in that episode, we had just talked about how my ballet teacher at the time pointed out my overdeveloped quads. And then 2 days later, you sent me that episode. And I was like, oh my God, it's not my fault. Because she talks about like the Q angle and how women become more quad dominant and throws off their balance and all these things. And I was like, oh, this whole time, like my whole childhood and into adult, I'm like, I don't know why my quads are so big. Like, I can't change that, but I became self conscious over this thing that I had zero control over. It was just the natural
Yeah.
way that my body was developing, and it wasn't wrong. So
Oh my
that was
gosh.
amazing. Like,
Exactly. I used to get called Quadzilla. Same. And then the Q angle, I tore both my ACLs because I have a pretty, you know, drastic Q angle and then such a disproportionate ratio between quad and hamstring strength. And then also they say that your hormones, the time of where you are in your cycle phase affects the laxity of your tendons and ligaments. And so there are certain phases of your period where you're more likely to
yes.
tear your ACL. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. And again, nobody tells you that. Nobody says, hey girls, heads up.
Yeah. And I think so much of us, like, especially for when you and I were growing up, like, I don't think our teachers and coaches knew. Like, how could
Hmm.
they? Like, we're only just now learning about this. And you have people like Stacey Sims who she knew about it, but it's also because she was deep diving into it in the research. It's not like the research was
Hmm.
public yet, it wasn't out there. So few people had that. And did you see where her episode, and I think it was was it Mel Gibbs?
Rob
Mel
Robbins, Mel
Robbins. Thank you. I'm
Robbins.
like, what is her name? one of them, so the Stacy has had a podcast episode on menopause, and I think it was Mel Robbins too, like, or somebody else along the same lines had a different guest on. Um, the most number one shared and listened to podcast episodes in the UK and in the United States. Different
Yes.
episodes, different people talking about it, but both of these women talking about menopause, talking about the female body. And it just goes to show, like, we're hungry for this information and we are ready to empower each other to be healthier and get through these things. And I freaking love that. And I'm so excited that, like, this, basically movement is happening where women are getting educated about themselves and confident in sharing that knowledge and talking to each other about it.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, and it's just like everything else, that there is a huge dissent. There are two women out there right now that are experts in this right now, right? That are kind of, I guess maybe three. There's kind of two main leaders that are really leading this movement. And one is like fasting and, do these things. And then there's Stacey Sims, who's like lift heavy, run hard. And it's just two very dissenting opinions. And it's a little bit confusing. How do
That's
you know?
fair.
And Stacey will tell you, don't fast. Like that's
Yeah.
horrible. And you're going
Yeah.
to get
She's not
more
a faster.
autophagy from exercise than you're going to get from fasting. And you're muscle wasting if you're fasting. So it's just a little bit confusing. And I could see how, we look at this stuff all the time and we're really into it and we're paying attention and we also know our bodies probably better than
Yeah.
the average person. But if you're just an average person who's trying to figure out like, freak, I'm going through menopause. What the fuck do I do? Which one do I listen to?
And I think that's key with just about anything, right? Like, you're always going to have somebody who has a different opinion. And it doesn't matter their level of expertise. They're going to have a bias towards their opinion too, in their studies and in their research. There's just no way around that. And so I think the key is you have to pay attention to your body. Like you said, you have to build a relationship with your body. And I just started this new thing, which I'm excited about. In my notes, I have a little list called Health and Fitness Personal. So I just started this when I started my like bulking journey. And I'm putting things in there like the day of my cycle, what my recovery was the night before according to my loop strap, how many hours I slept, how many calories I ate that day, and then notes on how I'm feeling. Everything from my mental, my physical, did I feel bloated? Did I get enough vegetables? How did my workout go? I'm putting my workout in there and then taking notes on how I felt. If I changed my workout, like I felt like lifting heavy instead of doing a Metcon, so I switched it or whatever. But things like that are going to be so key for finding what works for us, right? So if you, like, I
Mm-hmm.
did intermittent fasting for a while and I actually really liked it. Like, I didn't have any negative side effects. I didn't, experience any type of loss in my muscle mass or anything. My hormones were relatively balanced. So for me, like, I think I'm one of those women that if I wanted to do intermittent fasting or if I wanted to do a full day, like, I probably could do it and be fine. But then I know people who have done it who have had horrible experiences with it. So I think all of these things are just, we have to be willing to put in the work to learn about our bodies. And I hate to say it, but we live in a society where nobody wants to work that hard. We
Mm-hmm.
just want the quick fix. So we do want
Mm-hmm.
somebody to get on a podcast and say, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And it's like, that's not the solution for everybody. And try it, but then you have to also follow up with how did you feel? And you have to try it for more than a day. Like, you can't do
Mm-hmm.
this new thing for 2 weeks and be like, oh, that didn't work for me. It's like, okay, well, your body's not going to do much change in 2 weeks. Like, you've got to give it an actual effort. Um, Tangent for sure. But yeah, so I'm not surprised that there's there's differing opinions. And there's also like Gabrielle Lyon, love her. I think she's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, and she's got a kind of a different view of everything going on as well. So you do have to kind of just pick and choose the things and try them out, experiment, try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, all right, try the next thing.
Yeah, that's even true with everything that we've talked about, right? I have so many friends right now that are diehard carnivore. Everyone thinks that carnivore is the way to go, right? And they're losing weight. And of course they're going to lose weight because they've cut out all the refined crap that they were eating before. There's
Yep.
no refined food on a carnivore diet. So, oh, it's magic. That's a whole sidebar that I could go down anyway. But I know my body personally that I do so much better with carbs, and especially quick digesting carbs. My body and my energy thrive on quick digesting carbs, and not everybody is that way. Some people really truly do feel better on a carnivore, but it's not the same for everyone. And there's not just, if it was that way, right? If there was just one diet that every single person needed to follow, there would be no podcast, there would be no books, there would be no classes. Everybody would just do it and it would be fine.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like we should have another episode on just talking about this stuff, because like the carnivore diet for me, everything that we do know to be true about hormones in general, but especially everything we're learning about women. Like when I hear that women are doing carnivore, I'm like, please stop. Like,
I know.
please don't do that. Like, we need fat and we need carbs and we need men, gotta love them. They kind of get away with doing whatever they want, right? Like they fast, it's fine. You're carnivore, it's fine. You're keto, you're fine.
Yep.
For us, it's like, no, you need a balance. Like we have to have the full spectrum of all of the things, like nothing in
And we
excess.
need the fiber, and yeah.
Fiber. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, and then did you hear Stacey talking about the post-workout window? And I've always eaten this way, and kind of, I guess, the old school bodybuilder style of quick digesting carbs pre-workout, quick digesting carbs post-workout.
45 minutes.
Yeah, that small window, you get it in. I am like diehard stickler about that. If I don't have it, I'm like, my muscles are wasting and shrinking right now. They're just disappearing. Away. That whole workout was a waste. It was like, it didn't even do anything now. But
do it all again.
Yeah, exactly. But that men have a longer window. It's not the same. The window is more important for women than it is for men.
I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, that part of the episode stuck out to me because I was like, oh, excuse me? What? Because in my mind, like for the longest time, I haven't really concerned myself with that. I'm like, oh, okay, if I get protein in within like an hour, like I'll be fine. Like, and if I don't, oh well. But when she said that, I was like, shit, I don't always do that. Like sometimes I'm not hungry after my workout, so I'll wait a while. But yeah, that was really fascinating, and I want to do some more of my own like research on that.
Yeah, okay. I loved it. Again, going back to that trainer that I had at Tarleton that would bring me my pre-workout before we lifted. And then we would go upstairs and go back to the kitchen and he would hand me my protein and my apple and be like, now. It was awesome. If everybody had a mat, it would be magical.
We need to make a little like t-shirt or something. Everyone have a mat.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a mat.
Yeah.
I'm not that way as a trainer. I'm like, here's your stuff. Let's go. Okay, well, this episode was not meant to be about creatine and all the things, but I think you and I just were this, like you said, like this is our day to day. We eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, so it's natural that we'll get excited about it. But I want to transition us into our conversational topic, and I'm pretty excited to talk about this because I feel like this is still something that I struggle with all the time, but at the same time, I'm very proud of a lot of the growth that I've made with this. So we're going to share with y'all today about boundaries, all different kinds of boundaries, how to set boundaries, what is a boundary, how do you know what kinds of boundaries to set, our experiences with setting boundaries. This is something that I've personally seen a huge uptick of this on social media. You know, more and more people kind of saying things about setting boundaries or helping other people build confidence. I've also seen a lot of information out there that I don't personally support about setting boundaries. You know, so I find that that's interesting. One of my favorites, actually, and some people might not think this has to do with boundaries, but I think it does, is you always hear that saying, if they wanted to, they would, you know? And I don't agree with that statement for a lot of different reasons. But I think a big piece of that is that kind of the reason why I feel like this connects to boundary setting is in order to set good, healthy boundaries, you have to have self-awareness, right? You have to know what's important to you. Where do you stand morally? Where do you stand with what's important to you? What's the hierarchy of your priorities? And so when you use this statement, if they wanted to, they would, you are assuming that that person has all of their priorities in order, right? And they are very self-aware and they're doing this or not doing something intentionally. And then you're also working from a space of that you have clearly communicated to this person the things that you want or don't want, and you've set your boundaries with them. And I think for so many of us, that other person in that scenario probably isn't as self-aware as we want them to be. And for a lot of us, we probably haven't communicated with them and set our boundaries and our expectations. And so it's easy to just say, well, if they wanted to, they would. So it's kind of like deflecting any actual ownership and
Mm-hmm.
pushing away from having to be self-aware and do the hard work of communicating expectation and boundary. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you brought that up because the first time that I hear it, obviously I'm like, yeah. And then you brought up such a good point, though, that we have to meet people where they are. And if we haven't taken the time to get invested to know where they are, and again, if we haven't taken the time to really clearly communicate what it is that we want, then we can't have that expectation on someone. And I have just found in general that expectations are the quickest way to mental downfall, right? When you put other expectations on other people, you're setting yourself up for failure instantly
Absolutely.
because you can't control other people.
Yeah, I think that's 100% like there's I can't think of it right now. There's a quote, something to do with stoicism about that. Like you have to like and or is it stoicism or maybe it's Buddhism? To pull out one of my books here in a second and where it is. But something along those lines of, like basically expectations is like the path to hell. Like you will torment yourself, you
Yep.
will torment your relationships, like everything, nothing will go as you expect. And when you do set those expectations, you're always going to be let down. Like
Mm-hmm.
assuming you're putting those expectations on other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous about this topic. This isn't something I have actually really probably ever had an open conversation with anyone about.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, what makes
I
you
think I tried to
nervous?
avoid this in our list of topics because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say about that.
And I was like, let's do this next. And you're like, oh God.
Here we go.
So what makes you nervous about boundaries?
Not necessarily nervous about it, but I just haven't ever, I guess, really looked at it from that frame of reference, if
Like
that
being
makes
a
sense.
boundary setter, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's hard. Like I remember learning that I wasn't a good boundary setter. Um, and you have to, I feel like, well, you don't have to learn it this way. I had to learn it this way. Once people had mistreated me in so many different facets, emotionally, physically, whatever, workplace, once that happens so many times, you kind of have to sit back and be like, okay, well, what's the common denominator here? And it's like, and that's not excusing other people for treating you badly, but there is still a common denominator that has to be acknowledged. And in all those
Mm-hmm.
situations, like I think the first time I really set a boundary and I felt really confident about it was in my um, communications with work. And so I used to work for somebody who had zero respect for our personal time. She would call, text, email all the time, any hour of the day, weekends, it didn't matter. And I was just, oh my God, I have to answer. Like this person reached, I have to respond to them right now. Like everything was a priority, everything was urgent. And I remember, I don't know if it was like a book I was reading or, oh my God, this dog. Jesus. Something like sparked my interest in learning about business. And I remember I came across somebody talking about you have to end your business, right? It opens and it closes. It doesn't matter if it's a brick and mortar or not, but like your business has to open and close. You cannot work 24 hours a day. And so I practiced. I was so nervous the first time I ever did this. I had just started a job at a studio and I was working in more of a manager position. And I sent an email out and I was like, hey guys, like, this is when I will answer my phone calls for work. This is when I will answer my emails for work. This is when I will answer my text. And I set these time frames. This time to this time, I'm yours. Because and this was me, I worked from home. So I was like, when I'm home, like, this is when I'm going to do my hours. And I was terrified to send this email. Oh my God. I thought that it was going to be just met with, you have to answer all the time, or did it like the worst case scenario where I was going to be fired, you know, something dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine. Like everyone was like, cool, like we get that. And I was like, oh, you can just do that? You can just I can just stop working at this time when you're not paying me, and that's fine. And
I think that's the number one phrase that I've heard of when people say, when I hear people talk about boundaries, is almost everyone is like, oh, you can just do that? You can just do that? That's the number one thing that I hear.
It's very refreshing. And I think because subconsciously, you know, at least in my experience, like I was raised with what's the right way to say this? Like, I was expected to act a certain way, right? So I was raised to be like, you should do these things. And sometimes those things encroached on boundaries that I didn't know I wanted to set because you're young, right? Like, but maybe it's a physical. So one of my favorite examples of this is little kids being forced to hug or kiss a family member, right? Like, they aren't actively or consciously saying like, I'm going to have this physical boundary. Please don't touch me. But if they pull back or they say no, they're showing you that that's a boundary for them. And like, they don't feel comfortable for whatever that reason might be. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I grew up in the generation where I was forced. You are going to hug so-and-so. You are going to kiss so-and-so. If you don't, it's rude. Right? So then that mindset has just been adopted that if I don't do this thing that somebody else expects of me, if I don't act in a certain way, I'm rude, right? Or I'm not liked, or I'm not good enough, you know, insert whatever negative self-thought you want to have. And I feel like that translates so deeply into the back of the mind that when you're older and you do that thing, it's like, oh, who knew we could do this? Like, it's like freedom. Like, oh my God, I had no idea you were allowed to do that. Like, I can say no. Please don't touch me. And that's okay. Yeah, so that was my first experience with like really feeling what it felt like to set a boundary and feel confident in it after it was met with respect was with my time. Like setting the time boundary of work. Like I'm available to you from this time to this time. And I've done it every job since. Like my training, my personal training clients, my online nutrition clients, you know, at work. And I'm really very lucky right now that the people that I work for now are so respectful of our personal time, which is also helpful. Like it helps to work with people who do that. But, you know, I'm like, hey, this time to this time, like I'm in bed by 7. So I'm not checking my phone after 4:30 because I need my time at home. Like I'm with my family, I'm eating dinner, I'm getting ready for sleep. If you text me after 4:30 or email me, you may or may not hear back from me, and that's okay. And that's been really empowering to just own your time and have control and ownership over that.
Now I feel like I need therapy or counseling about my lack of boundaries.
Oh no.
Because when you said that, I was just thinking, I don't want, I've never wanted them to not contact me, right? Like, because I've run gyms and I just felt like the gym was open. I needed to be contacted if something was happening. And even my students now, I use a group texting service with them. So I don't have my phone number, but they can text me. And I don't care when they text me. But I'm like, text me, don't email me, because my email inbox is like the place where things go to die.
Yes.
But they'll text me at like, you know, like 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. And if I know the answer and if I can answer them right then, I will.
But do you
So
feel
does that mean
obligated to do
I
that?
need?
Or is it just something that is kind of like, oh, sure, whatever?
Yeah, it's just my normal.
So I don't think that that's an issue. Me personally, like I'm not a therapist, but I feel like in my experience, it was a level of obligation. I felt like I had to do that. Like if
Hmm.
my boss texted me, it wasn't like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's no big deal for me to get back to them. It was like, oh my God, if I don't do this, something bad will happen. Like this is
Hmm.
now top priority number one thing. Like I would stop conversations. I would walk away from dinner. I mean, it was unhealthy. So I think if you're in a place where if you're just like casually at home doing nothing, like just reading a book and your phone goes off and like, oh sure, let me just get back to this person real quick. That doesn't seem unhealthy. But if you were, if you and Will are out to a date night and you're at dinner and deep in conversation and one of your students texted you and you're like, oh my God, I have to stop all of this right now. And this is the most important thing. Then yeah, I'd be like, that's not healthy. Like that's not okay.
Okay, yeah, no. That brought up two things for me when you talked about that. One is the example that you gave really sounds like Devil Wears Prada, reminds me of
Mm,
that movie. And I think that really personifies that lack of boundaries, right? When it
yeah.
does feel forced and you have to give up everything immediately to respond. But the other thing I was thinking about when you talked about that is I feel like COVID actually is probably where boundaries really started coming back into the mix of us
Mm,
talking about it more and seeing it more because people were working from home and they were
yeah.
having to, for the first time, really identify, okay, what is work time versus what is personal time. And I know even at the university that I worked at during the time, we were kind of being monitored because the university really didn't want us to work from home. And so we were being monitored about our social media activity during work hours.
Oh, wow.
And so we had to be really conscious of what are we doing, what are we putting out during work? Like you couldn't, make posts or stories during work because it was work. And they were
What if
watching
it
your
was like
social
on one
media
of
to
those
see how you're spending your
automated
time.
things?
I don't think that they thought of
I
that.
would have been like, it's automated, it's scheduled ahead of time. It's not me.
Yeah,
It's my
yeah.
AI.
But we were being, yeah, really heavily and closely monitored.
Hmm. Which, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a level of unfairness to that because when you're at work, like if you're on site, you're not working the whole time. Nobody is. Like
Hmm.
you take your 15-minute break. So like what if it's like, oh, my 15-minute break and I post it on social media?
Yeah.
Like I don't like that. That would drive me crazy. No. Do you set so with your students you kind of have an open window, but what about like in general for your work stuff? Like are you responsive all the time or do you have windows where you're like, okay, these are my hours to get back to emails or phone calls or
I guess I haven't ever really like clearly established it. I tell my students like if you email me before class, I don't check email in the mornings. I don't check email until after I'm done teaching in the afternoon. So I don't check it at all in the mornings. I might quickly look just to make sure there's nothing from like the university president or something that
right?
is a priority or something got shut down or whatever. But generally I don't check or respond to emails in the morning. I really don't even like to respond to messages at all in the morning prior to like whatever the first thing that I have to do is because I'm usually still in my mind like prepping, planning, getting my mindset right for the day.
Yeah, so that's a boundary, like a subconscious boundary that you've created for yourself,
Yeah.
and I think that's, if somebody I don't know if this is true for everyone. For me, it was a great place to start with learning to set boundaries was time management. Managing my time, like that is boundary setting. Being able to say
Hmm.
from this time to this time, I will or will not do something. And it can be as easy as that. So, for me, I wake up at 3:30 in the morning. So from 3:30 until probably after my first two classes, so 3:30 in the morning to 7, I'm not responding to a text message
Hmm.
unless like I wake up and I did a couple things and I'm like, cool, I've got extra time before I need to be to work. Like I might jump on my phone and I apologize to all the people I text back at 4:30 in the morning, but it happens. I'm pretty sure I texted you really early this morning. um, but, that's a good way to set a boundary or at least start practicing boundary setting is like check your email from this time to this time or only check it after dinner or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, which is, sometimes there's like hard boundaries and soft boundaries, right? So that could be a soft boundary where it's like, okay, I'm only going to check my email from this time to this time or after dinner, but there's a little wiggle room there. Like for me, like I'm not going to get on my text messages or my social media until after 7 a.m. But if I've already meditated and journaled and played with the dog and drank my coffee and I've got 15 extra minutes before I have to leave for work, okay, there's a little wiggle room. Like that's a soft boundary, you know?
Hmm.
Um, which I think
So
time
then give me an
management
example
stuff.
of a hard boundary.
So my hard boundary when it comes to time management is um, after 5 p.m. So 4:30, I will probably stay on my computer. I try to stop work conversation after 4:30. After 5, that's my hard boundary. Like I'm not responding to your emails. I'm not responding to my nutrition clients. Like 5 p.m. is my cutoff for work. Like I am done for the day. Um, I will be with the dogs. Now, I might read my email, I might read the text, but I'm not responding.
Yeah.
Like, and that's something that took a while for me to feel comfortable to be able to do that. And it wasn't always a hard boundary, but it is now. Like that is a non-negotiable for me. Again, my day starts at 3:30. My work day starts at 4:45 in the morning. So it is not unreasonable that at 5 p.m., 12 hours later, you know, I can cut that off and be done for the day. So that's a hard non-negotiable. That's basically what a hard boundary is. It's your non-negotiable. It's the thing that it's like, no, like there's no wiggle room in this.
So then what other types of boundaries are there besides the time one?
So tons. I put together just like a small list of things that I could think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there's more out there. So time boundaries. I think the next biggest one that I think the two next biggest ones that are pretty common are going to be physical boundaries and then conversational boundaries. There's a lot more, but you could do workplace. So you can kind of take workplace and make it a little bit more isolated. You can have sexual boundaries. So even though you can have physical and sexual and separate those.
Mm,
You can have material boundaries. So that's a really good one sometimes for like kids and parents, like things that are off limits, like, kids like you can't touch this, you can't play with this. That would be considered like a material boundary.
okay.
It seems kind of silly, but with dogs, like dogs, we set boundaries, material boundaries with them all the time. You can or cannot get on the furniture. You can or cannot play with this thing. Trying to think, let me pull up my list here. So we had physical, time, conversational, emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, workplace material. Yeah. So those ones, again, I'm sure there's more. Those are the ones that
Yeah.
I came across. Um,
So after
I,
you worked on your time boundaries, what was the next kind of area that you went into?
so I don't have a clear path. I think it's kind of blended. Well, before I was aware that I was setting boundaries, this was years ago, I think probably in my early 20s, I was always really big on sexual boundaries. Like I have always been very outspoken about what I want, don't want, like, and don't like. That's never been an issue for me. Um, I don't think I realized it was boundary setting until later in life when I kind of learned more about this stuff. But so I think that's always been a steady line for me is, you know, there are things that I'm like, nope, I will never do that. And there's things I'm open to. And conversationally, with sexual partners, I've never had a hard time just saying yes or no to things and being very open about what I, again, do or do not want. Um, I think closer to later 20s in the last probably 5 or so years, the things that have really become more and more in practice for me are conversational boundaries. So the way that I will, I guess, let people talk to me. Um, I'm more confident in practicing setting those boundaries with people that I'm close with, like my family or Ryan. I'm still really working on that with people that are more in the acquaintance friendship world. So people that maybe say something that I find offensive or make a joke at my expense that I don't think is okay, um, or talk down to me or condescending in some way, I tend to clam up and get a little embarrassed and shut down in those scenarios. And so with my immediate circle, I have learned to have a little bit more, advocate for myself a little bit more and either ask a question, like, what did you mean by that? Sounded like you said this. Is that what you meant? I heard. Is that what so those I statements are really powerful. But then being able to follow it up with telling people right from the get-go, like with Ryan, we have these conversations quite a bit actually, because he and I have very different conversational styles. And so sometimes the way that he says things, I have to tell him like, hey, when you say that, this is what I hear. And so I would really appreciate it if you didn't talk to me in blah, blah way. And so it's more of a practice, but it is still me setting a boundary that's like, hey, that's not okay with me. You don't get to talk to me like that. You don't get to do such and such in that manner. But again, it kind of circles back to, if you don't have that awareness of knowing what you want and don't want, it's really hard to have that conversation. It's easy to feel reactive when somebody says something to you that you don't like. And I feel like a lot of the times people know that they don't like it, and so they get defensive versus having an open conversation. Because if you're defensive, it's like, I didn't like that, so put it away. And that usually leads to fighting, right? That's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why, especially couples, have fights or bickering all the time, is because their ego is hurt, or their inner child is scared, or something happened where the adult person that they are now has to defend and protect. And so learning that about yourself allows you to then set boundaries with your person about what kind of conversations are okay or not okay, what kind of things you can say or not, joking. Ryan's a huge jokester. Like 99% of his conversation is him making jokes. And there's some jokes that are off limits that we've learned over the last 2.5 years together. And I've had to tell him, like, that's a hard no for me. Like, you cannot make that joke around. I don't think that's funny, and that's not okay. So things like that, just building up that ability to know what's okay and not okay for you personally, and then speak that to other people.
I think that's the way that so many people get away with saying offensive things and being insulting is, I was just joking. It was just a joke.
Yeah.
I'm just playing. And it leaves the other person feeling like, but it didn't feel funny, and it wasn't funny to me, and it did hurt me. But the person who said it says, well, I just said it as a joke, so I don't know why you're being so offended. And I think you're right. That is where a lot of the fighting and bickering does occur. It makes me think about that scene from Talladega Nights where he says, but I said with all due respect. And they're like, well, that doesn't mean you get to say whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah. Which is, not to get too intense, but like, that's a form of manipulation, that is gaslighting. That is taking that other person's experience and basically negating it and telling them that their experience is wrong. And like, that's not healthy. That's not okay. So yeah, no, I agree with you. People they do that all the time. Oh, I'm just kidding. It's like, okay, well, you might think you're just kidding, but that's still not okay. Like, joke all you want, not with me. Take that joke somewhere else. I'm not here for it.
Yeah. This was one area where I can say that I really do feel like I had some boundaries. There was a group of rodeo families that we used to park next to and hang out with because we would all sleep in our, campers. And so the conversations that they would have were just not the conversations that I enjoyed or found entertaining or felt comfortable with. And I would sort of isolate myself. And then I got criticized for being sort of a snob and keeping to myself and not socializing with everyone because I just didn't feel comfortable with their conversations. Like even now, Will has 2 guys that he ropes with, and they have both said things that I find highly offensive in front of me. and I just choose not to be around them. And Will's like, but Shanna, they're good guys. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I mean, you can be around them, but I am choosing, no interest in ever having any kind of interaction with them again. And I don't know if that's like judging someone too harshly, but it was both in initial conversations of barely knowing them and just meeting them. And the fact that they were that open to say something that offensive, I can only imagine what they would say if they felt like they knew me. Right. So I
Yeah.
didn't feel the need to take that any further. I didn't need to know them any more than they showed me everything I needed to know about them from those statements.
Yep.
So I guess in that way, I have set some pretty stealth boundaries because those are pretty firm for me. Like, I'm not going to be rude to them. I will say hi, or, I'll be pleasant, in group company, but I have no interest ever in having a one-on-one conversation with them or spending time with them.
I think that really speaks to your ability to trust your instinct, and sit like confidently in what you believe to be right or wrong. Um, I just watched this little, I don't know, I think it was on some, like like entertainment or whatever, some like clip of Kristen Bell talking about her and her husband's um, experience teaching their kids about Santa Claus. And I'm going to paraphrase this, but basically they were telling their kids something about fantasy, and their daughters were like, wait, so we have to lock the doors and we can't talk to strangers and we can't do all of these things, but you let some guy climb into our chimney once a year and like leave random stuff in our house, and that's okay. And I love what Kristen Bell says. She's like, oh my God, like, her kids basically had this gut instinct that something's fishy, something's off. And her and her husband validated it. And they're like, yeah, that's bullshit. Like, Santa's not real. Sorry. And they allow their kids, they're honest with their children. Like, and, she's like, it's not like we're not letting them have imaginations or play or have fantasy. But she wanted to validate when her kids had a gut instinct that something was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
that they were right. And I was just like, yes. And so you said that, where like Will is like, oh, but they're great guys. And you're like, ah, something, what doesn't matter what it is, spoke to you and was like, that's not for me. And being able
Mm-hmm.
to notice that and then have the support system within yourself and in your surroundings, like, yep, that's not for me. And I'm okay. I don't need it. Like, that's amazing. And so many of us lack that. So I think that's really great that you have that self-awareness and the ability to acknowledge what does or does not feel right for you. And you're right, that is a boundary, subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
your body was like, no, that's not right. We're setting this boundary. That's cool.
Go me. I have a boundary. Okay, I was a little bit worried when we
Yay,
started this
Shanna.
conversation. I was a little worried.
Oh, that's
I think it's
awesome.
interesting. Like you were able to, the area where I'm impressed with you is when you talked about your sexual boundaries, because again, going back to society, that's an area where women are taught like it's not really about you, and you know, it doesn't matter if you get pleasure from it or if it's what you want. So I think it's really interesting that you were able to set that very early on and be firm in that, because I don't feel like that's an area where a lot of women do feel strong and able to set those boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We don't live in a society where that's promoted. And if you are a woman who is like that, you're labeled a slut or a skank or a whore or something else derogative and terrible. Um, I don't I can't give credit to anything. I don't know the pivotal moment in my life where I just had this realization that I was like, I like sex and I'm going to have good sex. And that's pretty much like the end of that story. We talked a little bit about, both of us have an interest in, or had an interest at some point being sex therapists and
Hmm.
advocating for that. And that's always something that's been interesting to me is like, I feel that women should just be sexually confident. And I hate that when women are, they're looked at in a certain light. And so I don't know if there's just this deeply rooted piece of me that wants to like stick it to the man, or my feminist ideals or but yeah, it was in my early 20s. I remember just having moments with people where I was really honest, and about what I wanted or didn't want. And I think what helped me build confidence with that is that it was validated. So I got lucky that, I was never in an experience with a guy that I set my ground rules or, basically was like, this is what I like and don't like, and you're into it or you're not. And I never had a bad experience with that. I never had anybody say anything negative to me or make me feel foolish about it. And I know that some people do. And so I think that in that way, like, I'm kind of lucky. And I think that helped build my confidence and resilience in that area. And I'm really, it feels like a weird thing to say, but I'm actually really proud of that. Like, I'm proud that I'm able to I was able to walk into my relationship with Ryan, feeling very sexually confident and feeling very okay with knowing that, not necessarily specifically with him, but like with any guy I've ever been with, that I'm okay being more confident than they are in bed, and that doesn't deter me and it doesn't make me feel any other type of way. And I think a big part of it is, as women, we have to understand that societally speaking, men do feel pressured to be better at sex than we are. There's this pressure put on them that that's something that they should just be good at, that they are dominant in that way. And I think that we have to help them when we do have the confidence, like, if you are a sexually confident person and you're having sex with somebody who isn't, like, okay, help them, give them the tools to make them feel confident, like, be nice, guide them, whatever. But again, I think a lot of it just came back to me getting kind of lucky with or not lucky, maybe I just made good partner choices. And I was always validated in my experiences. And I was like, cool, like, I don't have any problem setting those boundaries.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm trying not to go down the like sexual rabbit hole,
I know.
keep myself focused because my
I saw
brain
your
was
brain
like
going.
there's one of those conversation bubbles up in my head right now. Yeah. Okay, so what about emotional boundaries? What kind of boundaries do you have in that area?
So emotional boundaries is another one that's been challenging for me. I didn't really quite learn about this until I went through therapy. Like we talked about in previous episode, like, when I did my EMDR sessions and just learned more about what I needed, that really helped put me on a path to learning more about what was I actually asking for when I was reacting in some type of way in any given situation, So if I was having an emotional outburst or experience, or I was angry or I was sad, being able to feel my feelings, right? As cheesy as that sounds, like, just feel your feelings. But then on the other side of it, sit back and be like, okay, but what did I really need right then? What did I actually want? And I have found that my ego's pretty big when I'm feeling emotions that I don't want to feel. So if I'm angry or sad or embarrassed is a huge one for me. If I'm embarrassed, my ego is like, we got this. And like, she just puts up this huge wall of like, nobody fucking touch me. Don't talk to me. I'm a badass. I got it. That's not true. I'm a little crybaby. Like, I need a big hug and I want you to tell me I'm pretty and everything's going to be fine. But I had to learn that in all of these different situations that I just needed attention. Ultimately, that's what it boiled down to. So if I was really sad for whatever reason, or again, let's use embarrassed, I think, because embarrassed is probably the main one that I'm still working on. When I feel embarrassed, I am defensive. My immediate response is, don't look dumb. Nobody can think you're stupid. And so what I've learned to do with my emotional boundaries is ask for space. And again, using my partner as an example, like, I've had to learn to be like, I need a minute. I can't talk about this right now. It doesn't happen often. I'm much better at being like, okay, we can breathe and talk about this in the moment. But in the beginning of our relationship, it drove him crazy because I'd like, I can't talk about this right now. Like, just give me some time. And for him, it was like, oh God, we're going to break up. The world's ending because he's sitting on the end of the unknown. Right. And for
Yeah.
me, it was like, I need to sit back and figure out, why does this bother me? Why do I feel embarrassed about this situation? And what am I actually wanting to happen? And then when I
Hmm.
learned what I wanted to happen, I could ask for it, or I could communicate that and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what I wish had happened. And, or this is what happened. And if we come across this situation again, here's what I would ask that you do for me, or here's what I need in order to feel whatever it is I'm trying to feel.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's an example of an emotional boundary is asking for time, right? Like if you are kind of a story, not my story. I won't use any names or specifics, somebody else's story that it always comes back to me whenever I have think about this.
Okay.
Two people in a relationship fighting. One person says, I need time. I'm going to go over here. This person just chases them. They fight. I need time. Chases them. Chases them. Right? So that person
Hmm.
that's chasing is not respecting the emotional boundary that their partner is asking for. They're asking for space to process their feelings, to cool down, to chill, right? And if you chase somebody in that moment, you're not being respectful of their boundary. And so they're going to have a harder time asking for it again in the future, which is
Hmm.
usually going to just lead to fine, you're not going to give me space to process. Let's just yell and fight about this anyways.
Hmm. I was really proud of Will. You brought up something that made me think about this, that um, we joke all the time because he has a daughter and I have a son, and we joke that it would be so much easier if I had the girl and he had the boy. We would know how to handle those things better, especially at this age in the 20s, right? They're both in their 20s. So I had talked to Will one day about stop just yelling at her and having this immediate reaction when she tells you something.
Mm.
Hold on for a second. So he was like, Shanna, the other day I did it. He said, she called and I stopped her first and said, okay, listen, before you tell me this, would you like me to listen or would you like me to solve it?
Yay! Oh, I love that
Yes.
answer. That's
Yes. And so I
awesome.
was like that. I'm so proud of you because a lot of times, especially I think maybe it's more as women, we just need to vent about it. We just need to get
Yes.
it, air it out. We don't need you to solve everything for us. And my ex would be the same way. He would be like, why are you telling me then if you don't want me to fix it? If you don't need me to do anything, don't bother telling me. And
Oh,
I kind of like you, I was like, but I need attention and I need to vent it and I need to
yeah.
talk about it. And you're my person. I need it. So, yeah, so he really did that. I was so proud of him. And I was like, sometimes she just needs you to listen to her. You're the person that she turns to right now. And that's an
Yeah.
honor, awesome honor that she comes to you. Especially as a daughter of a dad when her parents are divorced, that's really good. She wants that she feels safe to come to you.
Yeah. And I love that. And another example of how to use that in reverse. So for him, it was great being the person to ask. And then if you are on the other end of that, having the confidence to tell, right? So if
Hmm.
I do it to Ryan all the time. I'm like, hi, I don't want you to tell me anything in return. I'm just going to say these things at you. Um, but again, I think that all kind of circles back to, you have to be self-aware enough to know what you want,
Hmm.
right? Because sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we start, and there are times where I have a conversation with Ryan and I will be like, I don't know what I'm getting here. I might want your input. I don't know if I want your input. I'm just going to start talking. And about halfway through, he might say something. And then I'll be like, yeah, I don't want your input. I'm good. um, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. How did he,
And then you talked about needing a space for a minute. So he did that with his daughter. The thing I did with my son, especially when it came to athletic competitions and even the stuff that he had with his father, I call it the 5 minute rule. And I even use this with my students too. I try to teach them. I'm like, hey, feel your feelings, exactly what you said. We're supposed to feel these things. We're not supposed to just be happy all the time and void
yeah,
of every other feeling. So feel your feelings. And it's a metaphorical 5 minutes, but take your time, go feel what you need to feel. And now that you've had that chance to really be aware of what you're feeling, now you can actually choose a response instead of just an
yeah,
immediate reaction that is going to keep you on this up and down cycle all the time. Now you can be kind of more level because you're responding to something and you get to choose, what am I going to do with this now?
I remember you told me that story. Like that has stuck with me since Alpine. You had shared that
Hmm.
with me about the 5 minute rule that you had with your son. And I always think about that because I'm like, man, that's cool. And
Yeah.
somebody else, there's another saying out there that's like, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, doesn't need more than 5 minutes,
Hmm.
And like those two things are always in my head. It's like, all right, Heather, go process, take your 5 minutes, go through it. And then like some days, like there are times where it just lingers. And so then I'll ask myself, like, will this be important in 5 years? No. Okay, time to move on. Like, let's get over ourselves and keep going.
That's such a great question to pose to yourself and to help you figure out if you need to stay stuck in that or how to get unstuck and get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's not going to be part of your life in 5 years, why does it matter? And like you
Hmm.
said, like noticing, like if you have the realization, like, oh shit, this won't be a part of my life in 5 years. And you just realize that, like, what do you need to do to change? Like, how do you need to change your life around so that you can get to that thing faster or remove that thing faster from your life?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. So I think one of the biggest things that we've kind of hit on multiple times with this is like noticing, I keep saying noticing your own self or self awareness. What are some tools that you have or that you know of or that you've used to help build your awareness of, I guess, notice and name is a good tool, right? Like, and how do you implement that kind of thing with your emotions or workplace settings? How are you building your awareness of self?
You hit on one. I really trust my gut. And I think that's something that we don't do enough. And especially as women, I think that we're more intuitive maybe than men. I don't want to always just talk about the differences, how different men and women are, but I genuinely do think that we are more intuitive. We
Mm-hmm.
see things a little deeper maybe than men do in the immediate situation. And so listening to my gut has just always been something that I do. I also journal pretty regularly and try to check in with myself. And when I was going through therapy, my therapist really tried to emphasize getting me to use the emotion wheel because I think that is a great tool that kind of like so many other things that we weren't really taught that when you're angry, it might not actually be anger that you're feeling. It might pedal down to something else. And when you can see the big, like the main emotions that we generally think of and feel on the outside of the wheel, and you're like, I think I'm angry. But then you start reading the other words, you're like, oh, this is really what it is. Kind of like what you talked about. Like, I don't know what I want yet. Hold on. Like
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out where did this, is it really anger or is it embarrassment? Is it really anger or is it ashamed? Is it really anger or I just am, lacking something, missing something, needing something? So having that tool to be able to dwell down. So she made my counselor, I loved it. She knew that I was a very task oriented person doing, so I had to pin that on my vision board. I had to put the emotion wheel on my vision board.
So can you explain a little bit more, like what is the emotion wheel? Like what does that
Mm-hmm.
entail?
Yeah, and it's so easy and it's just a visual representation. So imagine like a color wheel, just a circle, and there are layers to the circle. On the outside of the circle are the big main emotions that we think of: happy,
Mm-hmm.
sad, joyful, angry, whatever it is. And then it kind of has pie shapes, right? So anger, and then it dwells down into all the different other emotions that you might actually be feeling, but we don't have the verbal words. We don't have the
Right.
words to label it and identify it, but it helps you whittle down and be like, oh, okay, so it feels angry on the surface, but if I dig a little deeper, this is really what I'm feeling.
Mm.
And so it's just a good tool. And, like I've heard of a lot of parents using it with their kids to get them to help to start identifying their emotions. But it's just kind of like a little simple, like primary colored wheel that helps you kind of put it into perspective and visualize it.
That's cool. Pull up a link for an example of one and share it.
Hmm.
I feel like that's exactly what I go through when I find out that I'm actually embarrassed. Because usually I just feel angry. Like my first response is like, "Wah!" And then I'm like, oh, it's because my ego is hurt a little and I'm embarrassed. Or I
And
feel
then I have
foolish.
one more. Yeah, and that's just it. Like it's really not our initial reaction usually. But then I have one more tool that I got from counseling, and my counselor called it the fat triangle, which is an ironic term considering we just talked about body image. It has nothing to do with body image. We're not calling anyone fat. It's an acronym.
Okay,
But
I'm so sorry.
feelings,
Pause.
actions, yeah.
Come here. Dogs are a fucking train wreck right now, and they're all tangled in all of my cords. Hold that thought. I'm so sorry. Oh my god.
That's hilarious.
What is going on? Get back. Back up. Go lay down somewhere. No, no. Okay. Go. I love you both. Go. Okay, I'm so sorry.
I'm going to need you to put that audio in the podcast edit because that was awesome.
All of a sudden you're talking and my computer's tilting and the microphone's moving and I was like, oh my god, everything's crashing.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I lost you, Heather.
Okay, we're back. The drama. All of a sudden the screen showed me like start new recording and I was like, oh no, we just lost that whole episode, but I think we're okay. Normally
my gosh.
Ryan comes home in the next like 30 minutes. He's out later tonight for an op, but like, so they're getting antsy because they're like, what are we doing? Is his dad coming home? We're gonna go play ball. We're gonna go for a walk. And they're like, no, just you, mom. So they're all up in my space. Okay, I'm so sorry. Your tool from your last tool that you got from your the fat wheel, the fat cycle. What is sorry.
Just fat. Just go be fat and you won't have any emotions and no more boundaries. Like you won't have to worry about boundaries. Just be fat and you won't have to worry about boundaries. It's fine.
Great therapist. Give me
Yeah. Yeah. No. So it's called the fat triangle.
No, I wasn't
the fat
even
triangle.
close.
And but fat is just an acronym. Fat is an acronym. So the therapist asked me to be able to recognize and identify my feelings, my thoughts, and then my actions. And could I, like when I look at that, is it inside the circle, like something, inside the middle of the triangle, is it something I can change or control or adjust, or is it outside the triangle that I have to, kind of like what we talked about earlier, that we can't put expectations on other people? So identifying your feelings, actions, and thoughts, and are they inside the triangle or outside?
I think that's huge too. What's in and outside of our control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think so much of us worry and stress about things that we have zero control over. How have you used that throughout your day to day? Like, do you have an example of when you actually stopped and you were like, okay, feelings, actions, thoughts?
Mm-hmm. So at the end of my marriage, I was separated for a long time before I actually filed for divorce. And a lot of it weighed on me feeling guilty that it was my fault. And then also a conflict with my religion. Like, am I really a Christian if I get divorced? Did I really actually do everything that a good Christian woman would do in this situation to save my marriage? And, should I get divorced? And how will that affect my feelings about my beliefs? And I had to do a lot of work on shame and the belief that even though I did do something wrong, that I still deserved good in life, that didn't mean that from now until eternity, I never deserve anything good again. I didn't feel like I was worthy at all. And then even just a small thing, like when I started dating Will, he would compliment me and that made me feel uncomfortable. And so a simple thing that I would do, because I didn't know what to do when he would say that, again, it was kind of in my icky boundary of, I don't know how to receive that. So I just used the phrase happy birthday. It was very awkward for both of us for a while, but I would just say happy birthday. And it just came out one day. It was not like some clinically proven thing, but when he said something to me that was awkward, I would just say happy birthday. And he knew that it was awkward and I didn't know what else to do with it. Right. And so he would sort of leave it alone.
I don't know what to do with that. Happy birthday, goodbye.
Yeah. And then I actually realized the other day, I was like, man, he said something and I was like, oh, happy birthday. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't said that in like a year probably. So it's still a tool that's back there. And I think that that could be,
Are we done? Apparently we're not.
Nope.
Okay, enough. That's enough. Although I will admit, this is a weird recording day. I heard like right before they started barking, I heard someone talking in my kitchen.
Yeah, I did too.
You did too? Fuck. Okay,
Yeah.
hold on. Make sure there's not a ghost in my house. 1 second, please.
I heard a voice.
Did you? Oh my god, that makes me scared. Okay. I'm glad I'm on the phone with you. Don't go anywhere. No one's in my kitchen. This fucking guy.
What is he using to talk?
He's yelling at me through our security camera. Oh my god. Okay, I hear you. Goodbye. Okay. He's giving me a heads up that he's coming home. Oh my god, stop!
It sounded like a woman's voice, so
It
that makes it
did.
even funnier. I thought for sure it was a woman.
It's like first I was like, I made that up in my head, and the dogs barked, and then you said you heard it, and I was like, oh god, there's a ghost in my house. That's the most obvious solution.
Okay, and then you said ghost, and then your image just went ghost-like while you were telling me that story. I'm not kidding.
That fucking Ryan. Okay. I told him, I was like, hey, give me like a 5-minute heads up before you come home because we're going to be recording a podcast. That way I can like not have us be deep dived into a certain part of the conversation. We can take a potty break or something and like the dogs are going to bark.
Yeah.
I did not want him to yell at me through the security camera. Like, the fuck? Okay. So. Okay. This is going to have to be a pause moment. We'll keep recording. I'll edit it out. But Ryan's about to come home. The dogs are going to go nuts. He's going to take the dogs outside, and then we can continue. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Good, very good.
I'm going to take the dogs outside.
Wait, how's he talking to you?
So we have cameras in our house, like security cameras, and then cameras to watch the dogs. And they have two-way things. So if I open up the app, I can hear everything that's happening in the house. And then it has a microphone option so we can talk. The idea was that we would use it if we like saw the dogs doing something bad and we could tell them to stop. But they don't listen to us through the microphone. So it doesn't work.
Well, yeah. I was wondering, like, so could you be at work and open the app and be like,
Yeah. So I can turn it on and like, so we tried it for Charlie because we were testing leaving her out of her kennel, which she is not left out of her kennel anymore. The testing did not go well. But that we could like see her, and if she was doing something, we could talk. But as you saw, all that happens is they just start barking and lose their minds. Like they don't actually have any idea. They don't quite hear what's being said. So,
mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, he's about to pull in, and he's still on the camera. I can hear him making uncomfortable sounds in my ears. Even though I texted him 5 times, hey, please stop. Please stop. And he's still on the app. And this is all being recorded, and I'm putting it on the internet so that the whole world can see it.
I think people will be really curious about your camera app. Like, people will be like, oh, I want that. What do I do?
Yeah, we just got them on Amazon, actually. So we have like an actual security system that has cameras in the house. Mm-hmm. And outside. Okay. Go away.
Okay, we go outside and play now.
I've been with you.
We go outside and play now. Okay, we go outside and play.
Go. Stop. Go.
He loves you so much.
No, he just wants attention.
Give him the feeling wheel.
Okay, we're gonna go outside and play now.
Okay, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.
Love you too. Okay, so
I feel like we should have our significant others on the podcast at some point.
that's a great idea. We should. Oh God, no. Ryan might say something that I can't have the world hear. So
You edit it.
Okay, I'll say it can't be live or anything. Like pre-recorded.
Actually, I think live would be better. Like, people need to see Ryan in the raw.
No. The answer is no.
What do you think? Like, what's the thing that you worry about him saying? Like, give me like a general topic or an idea.
He makes politically incorrect jokes. A lot. And sometimes they're funny and everyone knows he's joking. And sometimes it's like, is that a joke? Or so no. We have one of our friends, they have very similar humors. And when they first met, I was really nervous. I was like, oh God, Ryan's going to say something and it's going to like be really offensive. And I don't know if we're all going to get along. But then it turns out she has the same humor as him. And so they just make the same jokes all of the time. And it's really great. But yeah, that's what I'm most nervous about, that he's going to say something that I'm just like, oh, people, that's not funny. You can't say that. Yeah. That's what is your food?
Working in higher ed, right? Yeah, working in higher ed, you have to be you have to be so politically correct. And for the most part, like outside of work, I feel like I'm pretty good at separating like what I can say at work and what I can't say at work. But Will, one time we're at the airport and he's like, "You an athlete?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't say that just because of the color of your skin."
Oh my God, no. Oh no, Will. No. Yep, Brian does things like that too. Where I'm like, how old are you? Like, what? Like, we don't know. And then I do forget that he is 10 years older than me. Like, he is in a different generation and it's different, you know? And so, yeah, he says stuff like that too, where I'm like, you can't say that. Like, we're not allowed to say things like that.
I know.
You can't ask people that question. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Oh.
Okay, so sorry about all the chaos. Let's go back to...
Okay, so we talked about the feeling wheel, and then we talked about the fat triangle, so tools that we use.
And you were talking about how you've used that with like your relationship, so with your ex, and like how you were processing all of that during your divorce and your separation.
Yeah, and we talked about what's within our control and what's not within our control. You came up with a great idea about, will it matter in 5 years? And I think that's such a good point. Is it going to matter? You know? Yeah.
I like that. I like it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever went through this when you were in any of your groups, but I know that in AA, they use the HALT method, where are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? And I think that's a cool one too, you know, to sit back and just check in. And for me, like 9 times out of 10, I'm hungry. I'm a hangry person. And when my hunger levels start to shift, I know that that's when I'm going to start to be grumpy. The downside to that, though, just weird tangent, is I've noticed an unhealthy trend that I've created, because forever I've always been a hangry person, that I'm now really afraid to be hangry, that I don't actually let myself get to a place of feeling hunger anymore. Which I know is not healthy. You know, we should feel our hunger cues. You should allow yourself that time for your body, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into all the science of that in this episode. But I find that fascinating that I'm so afraid of being hangry or being emotionally reactive, due to not eating enough that I now really no longer ever let myself go without having a snack or food or a shake or something. Like I'm constantly consuming calories just to avoid that. Or I have a fear of like going to work without a snack. I'm like, oh, but what if I'm there for 5 hours and I haven't eaten? And it's just that fear that I'm going to be grumpy or I'm going to be rude or I'm going to be mean. So that one
You and I are so similar in that.
Oh, really?
Yes, same. I don't go anywhere without food. And when Will and I got together, that was probably the number one thing that people told him about me was she eats all day. Like she eats a lot. You need to make sure you have food.
Did you feed her? That's
Yeah.
Ryan checks in with me first thing. Like there's some times where like we'll be texting and he's at work and he can just tell by the way that I'm texting him and he will come home with snacks. Like we have food. I could have just gotten my lazy ass up off the couch and eaten. But he will just come home and be like, snacks. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was hungry. Like who knew? But yeah, that's
Aw,
so I like that. So we have the fat triangle and then HALT.
yes.
Those are good tools for checking in with your emotions and just kind of seeing where you are, and then taking your emotions to the emotion wheel and making sure that you're labeling them correctly and processing those things correctly. And then from there, that's where you can set boundaries. You know, if you don't know what your emotions are and you don't know what you're feeling, or it helps to know why you're feeling what you're feeling, you know, then you can really set a good boundary. And without that, you're not actually setting boundaries. You're just saying things and hoping that something works.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that people realize that we're not trying to come across as mental health experts here. This is just from our own personal experiences, but we bring this into the conversation because this does definitely translate to your health and your well-being. You know, when you don't have healthy boundaries, you usually either you cope with some unhealthy technique, or now you're riddled with anxiety and stress and depression and all these other things. And so you don't do the healthy things for you that you should be doing because you're in this downward spiral. So we feel like this is relevant to all the conversations that we have because it is such an important aspect of our health. And that's one of the things that I was teaching my students this week. So another wheel, but the 8 dimensions of wellness, right? That you need to check in with where you are on all the areas. And wellness isn't just fitness. It's not just being skinny. It's not just having low blood pressure or whatever, that it's so much more broad encompassing of that. And that sometimes you might be killing it in occupational wellness. Your job is doing awesome, but it's affecting your social life. And so now you have no social connections and no social outlet. So you're still lopsided, right? And we're never going to be in perfect balance, but you have to decide sometimes like, hey, I'm giving too much to this and it's taking away over here. So I need to try to rectify that a little bit.
Yeah. And that's true for even with the nutrition side of things too. Like I know a lot of women, especially, and I'm only saying that because again, like I don't know a lot of men that have this experience. So if they're out there, I don't know it. The women that I know that they're constantly bloated or their gut health is thrown off, or they have migraines, or they have a bunch of weight they can't lose, or insert any type of thing that they have this chronic struggle with. If I step back and look at that big picture of, okay, well, are you setting healthy boundaries in your life? Usually the answer is no, right? They've got no boundaries at work. They have no boundaries with their partner. They have no boundaries with their kids. They have no boundaries with their family members. They have no boundaries for themselves, right? So personal boundaries, I think I didn't put that on the list. Having personal boundaries of what you are willing and not willing to do for your own time, right? And how you take care of yourself. If those things are off, then our adrenals are off, and then our hormones are off, and then our nutrition, our gut health is off, and all of that is connected. So yeah, it is definitely like, no, we're not therapists, any of that. But these things do play a role, I think, in both of our day-to-day lives, you know, with the people that we interact with. And especially for you with your students, like they're going through a lot of these different things at it, you know, they're younger, they're in their early 20s and navigating a lot of this stuff for the first time. and being able to find that balance and work boundaries in to have that healthier frame, it's going to be super helpful
Mm-hmm.
for them as they continue through their nutritional work. And I find that that's true for a lot of, I have mostly female clients, and they share a lot of their stories with me, and I, try to be the good coach of like, I don't give advice. I just ask questions and help guide you to the solution that makes the most sense for you. But in the back of my mind, I'm just like, you have a lot of other things that, like I have two clients that I've had to tell like, hey, I really think you need to go and work with a therapist on this specific matter. And I've had one client where I've had to stop working with them until they went and saw a therapist, because those things were so big in their life and they didn't quite grasp it. And they were just hoping that like weight loss would be the key. Like if I'm just
Mm-hmm.
skinnier, if I'm just a little healthier physically, then all of these other problems will go away. And it's like, nope, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not how it works. I wish.
Mm-hmm. It's like putting a band-aid on it.
Yeah.
So one question I did have about boundaries that I was thinking about is, what is the difference in a boundary and avoidance? Right. So I was thinking particularly about my son, because my son does not like to discuss emotions and feelings. Right. So when those conversations come up, he does what we're talking about. I can do that. I'm just going to exit this conversation. Right. I don't want to have that conversation,
Yeah.
but it's really just an avoidance technique. So how do we help people identify the difference between avoidance and a boundary?
That's a good question. So I think when you're setting a boundary, there's clarity there. It's very clear, right? If I'm avoiding something, it's usually just a no, which no can be a boundary. But I think a lot of times we use no as a general, like, I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do that, or I just don't want to talk about that, or I just don't want to. In my opinion, that's not a boundary. That is avoidance, right?
Okay.
Now, you can use those phrases to help you with a boundary, but I feel like a boundary has to have a why. You don't have to share your why, but it has to have a why. And I feel like avoidance usually doesn't have a conscious why, right? There's a subconscious why of like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to deal with that problem. Um, but I don't know. I guess in my experience, I feel like if I'm setting a boundary, there's a crystal clear picture of my expectation for myself, my expectation for this situation, my expectation for this person. There's a why, right? I have created like, okay, my moral compass, my level of priorities are these things. And this topic or this person or this scenario doesn't fit into my lists. So I'm going to set a boundary because it doesn't fit with me. Versus avoidance is more like, I don't have a list. It just feels icky. So no.
Well, I would say that Cinch would say my list is emotions and feelings. I don't talk about those things, and that is my boundary.
Which, hey, okay, like that's his boundary now, right? Like, and maybe
Yeah.
there's phases. So maybe, I didn't always have the boundaries I have now when I was younger. And I'm sure there was times where I was like, my boundaries just, I don't want to. And okay, like, I don't know. What's your take on that? What do you think the difference is, and how do we navigate the difference between those two?
I think it goes back to what we've been saying, that it's about self-awareness
Mm.
of, am I avoiding something because it's uncomfortable and it's going to take me outside my comfort zone? Or am I avoiding something because I already know that that is a choice that I'm making for my life? Um, but I think that's where sometimes I think things like narcissism and gaslighting and boundaries get taken to the extreme. Yes, we should have them. Yes, we should talk about them. Yes, there is some merit to all of them. But I think when they become so commonplace that we just we use them more as labels, right? We just throw
Yeah.
this label on everybody or everything. And instead of taking on that own personal responsibility, that we're putting it on someone else. Yeah. I don't know. That was just a tricky one that came up when I was thinking about it. But the
I
best
like that question.
definition that I heard of boundaries, or not definition, but like explanation, I heard someone say was that a boundary requires nothing of the other person.
Ooh, I like that.
And the example she gave was, I'm getting into the elevator with my son. I know my son is going to push all of the buttons on the elevator because that's what little kids do. They want to push every single button. If I just tell him that my expectation and my boundary is, no, you don't touch the buttons, and we get in the elevator, he's still going to touch the buttons, right? Because I told him not to do something.
Yeah.
I put it on him. Whereas if when we get in the elevator, I stand between him and the buttons, it doesn't require anything of him. It put the ownership on me.
Yeah. Yeah, the physical boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, so that made me think about them in a different way. It doesn't require anything of the other person.
I think that's really helpful because, again, everything we've been talking about is taking ownership, right? You have to self-awareness, you have to self-reflect, you have to know what you want, what you don't want, and all of that is ownership and my ability to stand in my self-confidence. And so I think that's probably the best definition of setting a boundary I think I've ever heard. And I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to use that for everything. So you brought up, I love that you brought this up because you brought up narcissists and labeling and like this. And I think you're right. I think that we avoid our own self-work, like the work we have to do for ourselves. And we avoid our own ownership in situations by labeling other people as something, right? Labeling them as a narcissist, labeling them as a manipulator, a bad person, a da-da-da-da. And it kind of, so I was in a relationship with somebody that I had a really hard time admitting that they probably had actual narcissistic tendencies until my therapist was the one that was like, I can't diagnose them, but I think that you are in a relationship with somebody who is probably a narcissist, like an actual clinically could be diagnosed. And I was like, oh, fun. Yay for me. But realizing that this person would constantly, quote unquote, set boundaries with me. But it was never, again, the only word I can think of, it was never clear. He never set a boundary in a way that was like, I need this in order to do well here. Or I need us to do such and such, or I need you to do whatever because it's going to help me with X. It was always just a blanketed thing, right? It was avoidance, right? Like he was just avoiding the conversation. It was hard. It was uncomfortable. For whatever the reason might be, he didn't want to deal with it. So he would usually either turn it on me in some way, right? All of a sudden it was my fault. I did something wrong, or his way of, it was always around emotional conversations or hard topics. So when we would get into a discussion about feelings and, I would say, hey, this is important to me to talk about. He would avoid it. And then he would disappear for like 5 days and not talk to me. And then he would come back and he'd be like, I just needed space. But we never actually followed up with anything, right? So it was never, there wasn't an actual boundary, because a boundary, again, like we talked about, there's clear communication. There's a thing that both parties understand what's happening. And with him, it was just, don't talk about it because it's a boundary. And so I think that's really helpful. I'm so happy you said that, because I think that helps clarify, like, that's avoidance. That's not a boundary. That's not, yeah. And like you said, for a boundary to be set, like, has nothing to do with the other person. But I don't know. Okay, well, now I'm kind of questioning this, because the other person doesn't have to do anything, but they do have to know, right? Maybe not with the kid example, but I think as an adult conversation in relationships, ooh, I don't know. Do they though? Because like I said, no.
So I
is a
think your
full
boundary
sentence.
would be I don't want to I don't feel comfortable talking about this topic. It doesn't require anything of them. They don't have to go out and do anything to get ready for that or to prepare for that, right? um, you're not saying, I expect you to talk about this instead of this.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
expect you to talk about it in this way, right? You're just saying, I am choosing not to participate in this conversation.
So do we think there's different ways that we should set boundaries with different people depending on their relationship with us?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, because everybody is individual. Like, you've got to treat everybody. I mean, you have to meet people where they are. So not everybody is going to be able to handle your boundaries in the same way. And just like you would want them to handle you in a way that is loving and kind, you have to do the same for them. And that might, again, not be the same for everyone. But when you talk about narcissists, when I started looking into that, because when I was going through my divorce, that was when the buzzword really caught up my ear, right? I think I'm a narcissist. And so I diagnosed myself with it. But when I
But that
looked
means
at
that
it,
you're not.
really, well, yeah. But when I looked at it, it was really my insecurities
Yeah.
that were the issue. And I think that's the thing too. So when we're quick to label someone as a narcissist, we're not doing anything to help them work through it or to, again, meet them where they are, like, hey, do you need to do some work on this? Because there might be something deeper rooted at this. Maybe it's not really that you just want to control me, but maybe you feel a lack of control in your life in general. And where did that come from? Like, where did that start with you? So I think that's where my issue comes in, is that if you just, like, I think it's so common on social media right now, like, oh, he was a narcissist, so I dumped his ass. Like, yeah, we're done. And, if he would have, if he wanted to, he would. So I'm going to dump his ass, right? But we are not ever, and not that you need to put yourself in a bad situation or a dangerous situation or an unhealthy relationship. But at the same time, all the people I know that are single are like, oh my gosh, there's no good people out there. How am I supposed to ever find anyone? They're, like, dating is horrible. Well, we have these expectations so high, and we have these labels, and I can go on social media right now and look up a guy that I'm interested in dating, and there's probably a social media page where someone's talking about him, and go see what the comments are, his ex-girlfriend's said, right? So am I going to take her perspective? Because I don't know what her baggage was, and I don't know what her past was, and I don't know what she brought to the relationship. Yeah. I don't know. I think we can't
I agree.
blanket code everything.
I feel like that word has become very trendy over the last couple of years. And I think that for me personally, I went through the same thing when I started seeing it and it was popping up. I was also in that pretty tumultuous, relationship. And I remember looking up, how do I know if I'm a narcissist? Is it me? And I just went in this deep dive, like, oh my God, it's me. I have all these issues. And again, so grateful for my therapist, because I remember talking to her and she was like, a true narcissist. So there's a huge difference, right? There's like a social media narcissist, and then there's clinically diagnosed. And they are two very different breeds. And like the social media trend of just, like you said, maybe somebody didn't communicate their feelings in whatever type of way you had this expectation that they should have, right? This guy didn't meet your expectation, so now he's a narcissist. And it's like, well, that's not what that means, right? And then there's like people who are truly narcissistic, who have the almost inability, similar to like some level of psychopaths, to feel feelings, right? They lack that ability. They manipulate without knowing, right? A lot of this isn't always a conscious thing. Sometimes it is. But their whole role is they have to be the center of attention. They must be the center, good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't matter. The world revolves around them. And they will do everything in their power to manipulate everybody in their circle into thinking that they are the best. And, you can filter that in lots of different ways. So it could be your partner who is a true narcissist is gaslighting you into thinking you're crazy, you did all, you're a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. And you go tell their brother, this is what your brother's doing to me. But that narcissist is going to the brother like, she's crazy. She did this to me. She did that to me. So they're spider webbing and weaving these stories so that they always look like the hero and their main person. Usually narcissist works with just one person at a time, right? So they're not ruining everyone's life all at the same time. They are a little bit, but they're just focusing in on that one person, and that one person you get destroyed, you get broken down, and so I think I agree through that. when I see these girls who are like, oh, I was with a guy for 2 weeks and I dumped him. You are not with a narcissist. Like, I'm sorry, you just weren't. That's not how it works. Like, they are not 2 week relationship people. They are long-term relationship people. They are there. In those first 2 weeks, you are a gem. You are the most wonderful, amazing, perfect thing that's ever touched the earth. So if you tell me that you broke up with your boyfriend after 2 weeks and you're calling him a narcissist, like, no, like that's not the situation. So
Yeah.
totally agree. That's not what it's like.
Hey, sidebar, all of my stuff is about to die right now.
Oh,
like
no.
my headphones
Okay.
and my phone are about to die. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We're coming up on our 2-hour mark because it took us like 8 hours to get started and all these other things.
I just didn't want it to cut off in the middle of the conversation. And
Okay.
it was good conversation. I was like, no, not right now. What do I do?
But do you have time to wrap up a little bit more, or do you want to?
Oh, shoot.
Did I lose you?
Wait, say it again.
I was
Yeah,
just
say
saying,
it
do you
again.
think you have time to kind of wrap up? Like, we can kind of cover the last little piece and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only other thing I wanted to bring up, at least in my experience with setting boundaries that I struggled with, and I see that a lot of people do, is feeling guilty afterwards. And so going through, and I'll put this in our show notes too, is like there's lots of reasons why we might feel guilty. I think one of the reasons that sticks out to me is, well, I guess two, is like we weren't really given a lot of tools to set boundaries. And we weren't always taught that setting boundaries is okay. So a lot of times we were taught that if you set a boundary, you're being rude, you're being disrespectful, you're not treating somebody the way that they should be treated. So it's always thinking about the other person instead of yourself. And I think we're all kind of raised that way. We have to think about everyone else first and then put me last. And that can lead to us feeling guilty when we finally put ourselves first. You put yourself in that position of, no, I'm going to advocate for my time, my body, my words, whatever. Being a people pleaser, that's a huge reason why people feel guilty setting boundaries, because they want everyone to like them. They want everyone to think that they are a yes man. I'll just say yes to everything. And, I'm the most reliable in the room. And so when you start setting boundaries, that view kind of changes. So I think with that, like what we talked about earlier, just start small. So if you want to start practicing setting boundaries and you're worried about any of those things, or you do feel guilty, like just start with a small boundary for yourself. Like maybe your boundary is, I'm going to turn my phone, my social media off at 7 p.m. Like that doesn't affect anybody else, right? Except for you. And it's a small thing that no one's going to even notice, but you can start setting and feel confident. Like, oh, I did that. Okay. And the world did not end. Everything's okay.
Yeah. One of the things that really helped me was reading Mel Robbins' High Five Habit. I wouldn't have identified myself as a people pleaser until I listened to that book, and I was like, oh, what? Nah. But it was actually very good at what you were talking about getting over that guilt of feeling that you have to say yes to everything, or that, and trusting yourself and having confidence in yourself. That one was really helpful for me.
I remember your house in Alpine, you had the handprint on your mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still use that all the time. I think about you, like days where I feel like my confidence is low, or I'm struggling, or I just don't want to do something. Like I will go find a mirror and I will give myself a high five. And yeah, that is a really cool experience. I cried the first time I did it.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. I love that.
And there's something powerful about that, right? Like she's so spot on that we don't recognize ourselves and we don't high five ourselves. And so there is something truly powerful about that.
Oh no.
Wait, did you lose me?
Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay. Yay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you were saying there's something really powerful
about that. Yeah. About high-fiving yourself. There is something, she's right. There is something to that.
Yeah. I'll link that into the show notes too. So read that book and get it on Audible. Yeah. So this is a fun, like kind of exciting shit show of an episode. Little bit of real life chaos happening. But I think it was good. I think we covered a lot of really good stuff about boundaries. I think we could probably even follow up with this and do some deeper dive. we didn't get a chance to really talk about the importance of setting boundaries. We just dove into it. But there's, benefits to setting boundaries for your mental health, your stress, your anxiety, all of those things. Do you want to share about our upcoming fun project we're going to do?
Oh, yes, I am excited.
Me too.
So Will and I did this kind of, but we didn't do it very well. So I'm excited to do it with you. So after doing the show, an episode about supplements and about pre-workout, Heather and I have decided to get a sample pack of supplements and the varying different kinds, some that are stem, some that are non-stem, some that have caffeine, some that don't, some that have beta-alanine that I don't love, and some that do. And so we are going to sample them together. So we'll try them and we'll do the same workouts. We work out fairly similarly.
Yeah.
Heather's much stronger than I am, but fairly similarly. So we will do the same workout with the same pre-workout, and then we will rate and review it and let you know how it actually compared to what it said it was going to do, how it worked for us.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Also because we get a free shaker bottle with it.
I know, and they are good shaker bottles.
It's cute.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So once we get our package in, we'll set dates and so if you're not following us on social media, make sure you do that so that you can stay tuned with our journey, because we're going to post it on our socials.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah, I'm really pumped about that. I'm weirdly excited about it. I don't know why I'm so excited, but I am.
No, I've been wanting to do some kind of challenge like this with you. So when you immediately said yes, I was like, oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Because you're busy and you are much better about saying no and setting boundaries around your time than I am. So I was really pumped and really fired up, because I'm the one who's like, jump in and do it, say yes and go do it. And then you realize oh shit, I really don't have time for any of that.
Well, I like this one because it totally fits into my schedule. Take pre-workout and workout. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
That I can do for sure.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Well, lots of good info here about boundary setting. We'd love, again, as always, hear everyone's stories. So if you've got a boundary story, side note, somebody I know that just started listening to our podcast with episode 1 and shared their whole life friendship journey as an adult and what it's been like making friends and the challenges. And it was just 2 days ago. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So we love these stories. We love when we connect with y'all. So if you have something with your boundaries, or if you're working through boundaries and you have questions, or you want, we're going to put some resources to some different articles. We'll relink some of our therapist stuff that we linked in other show notes, so that if you do want to seek out therapy and help, you've got some guidance there. And please like and share and review our episodes and tell your friends and family about it, because we want to share our stories with y'all.
Absolutely. We definitely want to know what's working for you with boundaries, or what area of boundaries have you struggled with the most, or where have you seen the most success? Maybe you have tips for us, because again, we want to hear all sides of it. I would love to hear a male perspective on boundaries too. I think that would be super fascinating.
That would be interesting. All right.
We'll go back and ask our men about it and report back. Yeah.
It's going to be what's a boundary?
Yeah, will too. Same.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your night. I'm so happy we had this very fun, exciting episode. It brought some joy to my very long day. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. And make sure and set your boundaries and tune in for our next challenge.
Yay. All right. Bye.